Hello, welcome to episode 10 of Knitter Matters. Wonderful to have you join us again. Thank you. If you're new to these lives, do post in the comments box where you're from. I can't actually see the comments box at the moment, but I will get back to you afterwards. And feel free, everyone, if there's any knitting related comments, to post them in the thread here or any questions you have about knitting. I'm here to help. I'm Cheryl Lampard. I'm an image consultant. My company is Style Matters International, and I've had two lifelong sessions, knitting and sewing. And in particular, knitting is something that I find extremely relaxing and therapeutic. I used to actually own a yarn store in Brighton, England too, called Yomo, which is Japanese for hair of the sheep. Anyway, welcome indeed to episode 10. This is wonderful. Do follow us on social media. After this live, we do post it on our Facebook page, but I'm excited to tell you now that we actually have our own YouTube page, and I would love it if you would kindly subscribe to that. Apparently, after 100 subscribers, you get your own URL, which makes it easier to find. So if you'd like to go to YouTube, search out Knitter Matters, and then hit the subscribe button, that would be fantastic. We're also on Instagram. Anyway, today's episode, I'm going to ask the camera to turn round to what I'm actually doing. Today's episode is devoted to one project. This one. It is a sampler Afghan. I wanted a project for beginners, one that extends and challenges your technical knowledge. It's also good if you've actually gone beyond the beginner stage too, because there's all sorts of ways that this will challenge you, and there's a more technical way to do it as well. So I'm going to explain to you what this pattern is. Our friends at Maxim, I'm using this pattern from Maxim and the yarn, and our friends at Maxim have very kindly offered to give us this as a free download. I will publish the link for that download afterwards. It'll be on the Knitter Matters page. Now, when you first see the pattern, it looks like a lot of text. Let me show you. There's a few pages of this. It looks like a lot, but please don't worry. I'm going to show you exactly how this pattern works, and then I'm going to explain some of the instructions and show you how to do some of the stitches. Okay, let me move that just for the moment. Okay. So the Afghan, or blanket, whatever you want to call it, I'll put that there so you can see that at the same time. The Afghan is based on, I'm sorry, the cameraman's making a face at me. I'm obviously holding it in the wrong place. So let me just explain this. It's knitted in 6 different strips. Strip A to strip F. And within each of those 6 strips, there are 7 blocks. There are 6 different knitting pattern blocks within that. Don't worry about that. That'll become apparent. What you have to know is that there's 6 strips and 7 blocks. And then what happens is you seam them up vertically afterwards. And then there is a border that you knit round the edge. Okay. So there's 42 blocks in total, but you're sewing up 6 strips. However, you might prefer to do these as knitted squares rather than in a long strip. And for ease of demonstration, I'm going to do them in knitted squares, and I will show you some of those in a moment. I'm going to move this out the way, and this, and then I'm going to show you some of the details of the pattern. The yarn that I'm using, it's a worsted weight, a medium, and remember, on our abbreviations chart, we have, sorry, not the abbreviations chart, remember on the yarn gauge and weights, it's this weight of yarn, a medium weight. And you're going to be using, say, anything from a 7 to 9 US needle or a 4.5 to 5.5 millimeter needle. This yarn is really nice actually. It's called Woodlands. This was in the bundle that I received on Friday, if any of you saw the unpacking video that I did. What I like about it, it really knits up nicely to the tension that or the gauge, I should say. You need a pair of knitting needles, US size 8 or metric size 5. Now, you may need to adjust that depending what your tension is. Because I hate loose knitting, I actually, when I did my sample square, I actually did it, I thought I was being smart, and I did it on a 4.5 needle first. But I actually found this a bit too dense. So sometimes you catch yourself out by being too clever. So I went up to the 5mm or the size 8. Sorry, I do talk in millimeters. A lifelong understanding of millimeters. It's a US 8. So I went to the US 8, and that actually works really nicely. It's still nice and close knitting, but it's not too dense. The smaller needle was too dense. In this size needle, my gauge is spot on. So you may have to go up or down a size, as we discussed before about gauge. This yarn, it's acrylic and alpaca. There you are. You see the medium weight there. And what I find with an Afghan or a blanket, anything like that, you want to be able to wash it. You want to be able to snuggle up in it and wrap yourself in it. So you want to be able to wash it easily. And the acrylic helps you do that. The alpaca in it gives a nice loft to it. It's really nice and soft. It's beautiful. Okay, so that's the tension. Abbreviations I'm going to come back to. I just want to show you how we're going to work this. So remember I said that we've got 6 strips, and it's 6 different designs of squares. You might find it easier when you get your pattern to highlight it, as I have done here. So if you go through it, and again, don't faint when you see how many instructions, because you don't have to follow them all at the same time. What I did, I went with a pink highlighter and highlighted all the pattern groups. So cross cables pattern, then there's a box stitch pattern, then a lacy cables, then a woven pattern, then a large lattice pattern, and then a diamond pattern. Okay, so on pages 1 and 2, it's all the instructions for the different blocks of design. To actually make the Afghan, you need to go down to page 2, where you start. Now, this is telling you how to do it if you want to do it in strips. And I'll just talk to you about that for a minute, because you may want to do it like this. If you're knitting it in strips, you're only going to have to cast on once and bind off once, because all your colour changes and the pattern changes will be box after box. It'll tell you change to colour 2 and knit 2 rows, etc., etc. If you're doing it in squares, as I am going to do, you're going to have to obviously cast on and bind off for each square. But I want to do mine in squares because I actually like to position my colours afterwards. I want to decide where I want the patterns, and I might want to sew it up. I actually want a sort of grid. I want to sew mine up so I've got a grid. I've got maybe a fancy stitch going vertically and horizontally. Okay. You will need to refer to how to make the Afghan if you are still knitting your squares, because you'll need to know how many rows you are going to do for each square. That will become apparent in a minute. So I know it looks a lot, but actually once you highlight the differences, it's sort of almost a bit of a relief, because you really understand then that these are patterns to do the blocks of pattern, and then to actually make the Afghan, the instructions are here. So if you prefer to do it as one continuous strip and you think you're comfortable with that, then do that. I'm going to show you how to do it as squares. And the only difference is that for me, I have done, these are 2 pattern squares, and I'm going to show you how to do these today. If you're doing it in squares, the only difference that I have done is I have put an edge stitch either side of my pattern square. The reason I have done that is I always like a selvage. because I want to show you when we come to sewing it up in a future episode, I want to show you a couple of different techniques for sewing up. You could also put edge stitches in, but remember they are additional to the pattern. So you're going to have to remember you've always got a stitch at this end and this end on every row. If you're going to find that confusing, don't do it. You can just knit exactly as the pattern says. But just remember you're going to cast off, you're going to bind off when it says to change colour. Okay, so that's the only difference, because I'm obsessed about selfridges and I always put them on, but you don't have to. So this is a cross cables pattern. And this is where I'm going to explain to you what I mean about referring to the Afghan pattern for how to make it. So each square is about 7 inches. And that's another thing. You might not want to make a whole Afghan. You might just want to make a cot blanket or a large cushion cover. So you might want less squares. So if you're doing it as individual squares, you can choose how many you do as you go along. So with the cross cables pattern, this actually is, there's 44 rows. And that's a repeat pattern of 1 to 16, but it actually gives you 44 rows on this, and each of these rows is slightly different. Okay, you're actually doing a pattern stitch on the right side row and then a pattern stitch on the wrong side row. This might look a lot of work, it might look complicated, but let me tell you, you have done all these stitches other than the one that I'm about to show you. You've got knit stitches, you've got purls, you've actually got a cross cable, and we did cables a few weeks ago. These are just a different looking cable, and I'm going to show you how to do that in a minute. This is the large lattice pattern. Let me get this one. Wait, bring this one in. Now this pattern, it's only a 16 row pattern. The one thing about this one is it's easier on the wrong side rows because it's just purling on the wrong side rows. The pattern rows are actually on the right side rows, so it's a little easier. And again, you've done virtually every stitch here except for one, which I'm going to show you. So you do need to actually be cognizant of how the Afghan is made, because clearly this is only 16 rows. Well, you need about 42 to 44 rows for each of the squares. So what I've done here, this is page 3 of the pattern, and I've just highlighted where it says this is where you've changed to the large lattice pattern. You need to work 42 rows of it, ending after row 10. So essentially you're going to do 2 repeats of it because it's a 16 row pattern plus another 10 rows. Okay, so again, you could highlight those things that you're doing, and you know, for ease of use I would highlight them in different colors. So now I'm going to show you how to do the 2 designs that I've picked up here. I'm going to start with the harder one so you can finish on something a bit easier. Okay, you will need a cable needle. I'm going to throw my yarn on the floor here just so it's not rolling all about. I have just knitted one of the cable crosses so that you can see what it looks like. This is the full pattern. So we have blocks of cable crosses, then we have blocks of stocking stitch. It's a really nice pattern. It's a really nice square. Okay, I'm just going to lean across and have a sip of my water. Sorry. But you can see here, excuse me, you can see here that the cross has with your stitches. So I am going to, I've just done a couple of foundation rows. I'm going to twist myself so the camera can follow me. I've highlighted the next row that I need to do. And again, sometimes a ruler is useful. I always, you know, you can use something to show where you are. I would suggest also that when you're doing a big pattern like that, you use your row counter or clicker so you know where you are in the pattern. or you can just use a paper and pencil. You can use this as a counter, this sort of thing. I like my clicker because these things sometimes roll on of their own accord. Okay, so I'm up to, I've just done row 6, so I need to do row 7, and I'm going to show you the special abbreviations are in this pattern. So just let me show you. We're going to do a purl 3, a T4F, and you could say, what does that mean? Because that's not on our basic knitting abbreviation sheet. That if you haven't already got it, I'll be happy to post it on the page so you can download it and print it off. So the purl 3 TF4, then you're going to do a TFB purl 3. What does that mean? It's very simple. It says up here, TF4, you twist 4 front, and it tells you exactly what to do. You slip the next 2 stitches onto a cable needle, you hold them to the front of the work, you purl 2 from the left needle and then 2 from the cable needle. And I'm going to show you what that means. Okay. So I'm just going to do my introductory stitches. I've got to move this way so you can see me. Purl 3, 1, 2. I'm sitting on my yarn, which isn't a good thing. Right, this is the T4 front, the twist 4 front. So I picked those 2 stitches off my left hand needle. I place them at the front of the work. Now I'm going to purl 2 stitches. Okay. Now I'm going to knit these 2 stitches off the cable needle. You can knit them straight off the cable needle. Because I'm in an awkward position here, I'm just going to put them back on my needle. Then I know they're not going to slide off. And I knit those 2. Okay. What you're getting is a left leaning slant. Now we're going to do T4B, which is twist 4 back. So I take the next 2 stitches, which are purl stitches, and I put them at the back of my needles. So you can see they're held on the cable needle and they're at the back. And again, this is much easier when your knitting is right in front of you. I'm just a bit twisted here. Oh, so I'm knitting my 2 stitches off my left hand needle. Now I'm going to purl the 2. I'm going to put them back on my needle for safety's sake, but you could just knit them straight off the cable needle. And now I'm purling 2, and then I purl just to get to the end of my row. Then I will show you the next row because that's another instruction. Okay, I'm just going to turn this and quickly purl along. I just put myself 2 little starting stitches here. Sorry, this is oh gosh, I got to knit the knits here. I've got to knit 5, sorry. I'm saying purling. It's a wrong side row, which is often a purl row. In this case, I've got to knit 5, I've got to purl 4. Then I've got to knit 5 again. This is the pattern that's a bit different on every row. So you do need your ruler or something to know which row you're on. Okay, now you can see there how my left leaning cross and my right leaning cable crosses are joining up there. I want to show you this next row because there's another instruction here, which is purl 5. Well, we know how to do that. CF4 now. CF4, cable 4 front. This is more like a traditional cable, which we've done before. So I put 2 stitches onto the cable needle and hold them to the front of my work, then knit the 2 from the left needle, then 2 from the cable needle. Okay? I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. I've got a purl 5. then I'm going to do my cable forefront. So I put my 2 stitches onto the cable needle, I hold them to the front of the work, and this time instead of it being purl, it's knit, much more like a traditional cable that we did before. 2 stitches off the left hand needle, then the 2 off my cable needle. Now I just need to purl 5. My 2 end stitches, and then you can see what I've done. Okay, you can see there quite clearly how that crosses over. That's exactly what we've done here. And then the next rows you'll be doing, you're going that way, and you'll be doing your twist front and your twist fold back. This is the only time we do the cable where we're putting 2 in front, knitting and knitting. The others we're knitting 2 and purling 2, or purling 2 and knitting 2, depending which order. Okay, that's the cables cross pattern. Let me show you now the easier one. You deserve a rest now, so I'm going to show you the easier one, which is the lattice pattern. That's this one. Really nice pattern. Very, very easy. There's just you've done all these stitches without realizing it. It's just the order in which they're done that makes the pattern. So I'm going to show you this. Again, drop my yarn to the floor so I can unravel it. Again, I've done a little piece so you can see that's just one. It's one repeat of the design and one repeat across the design. So I'm going to show you how to do that. I'll get the page, your abbreviation page, to the front too, because you'll need that. Or maybe you don't actually on that. No, you don't. Sorry. But you might need the basic abbreviation sheet, because we're going to do something called a PSSO, pass slip stitch over. PSSO, pass slip stitch over. I'm going to show you how to do that. Everything else you've done here. So I'm starting on my row 1. This seems a bit odd because we're starting with a purl, but trust me, it works. We are going to do knit 2 together. Now I do knit 3, 1, 2, 3. Sorry, I've got my thing caught up here. I'm going to yarn over, I knit 1, yarn over again, knit 3, 1, 2, 3, slip 1, knit 1, pass slip stitch over. Let me unpick that for you so you can see what I did. The next stitch is a knit. I'm going to slip it, I'm going to knit 1, and then the slipped stitch I go in with my left hand needle from the left hand side of the stitch and I pull it over there. Then I've got to knit 1, finish off my row. That's just my edge stitches. I'm going to whiz along this row and show you the next row. This is where it's easier, because on the wrong side rows for this design it's just purling, and I know you know how to do that. So what you're doing is you're making eyelets, you're making holes with the yarn overs, and we've done yarn overs in our lace knitting, but you're also making up the stitches. You're decreasing and adding. So with the yarn overs you add, with the pass slip stitch over and the knit 2 together you are decreasing, so that you're not actually increasing the number of stitches, you're just creating holes where you want them. Let's do another row so you can really see that start coming in. So my next row is a purl, it's a knit 2 together, this is a decrease, then it's a yarn over, I've got to knit 3, yarn over again, knit 2, I'm going to give my yarn a yank here. Now I do a slip 1, knit 1, purl slip stitch. Remember, slip 1, knit 1, purl slip stitch over. Okay, and I'm going to do that. One thing I should say, where it's got in brackets, it means you repeat that across the row. So the brackets here and here, you repeat that section across the row. I don't have that here because I've only doing a small sample. But that is your purl slip stitch over. And you can see what you get is, again, you get a left leaning kind of stitch and a right leaning. So we've just literally done the 2 rows that are at the bottom here, and that's a knit 2 together, this is a purl slip stitch over. You're knitting 2 together, then you create a yarn over, so you make up for the decrease you've just done, and on this side the yarn over, and then you do the purl slip stitch over. So you're getting a right leaning and right and left leaning shaping, if you will, and eyelets to create the design. And that's all there is to a purl slip stitch over. If you have any questions, just have another look at the video when it's posted, or feel free to put comments in the Facebook page. Next week we'll do another couple of squares. Let me know how you're getting on and if you have any difficulties. And again, don't stress over the pattern. It looks more complicated than it actually is, but I do recommend that you highlight the bits that you're going to work on. Take some time to do that. It's like everything else, like reading a recipe twice. It's like, you know, measure twice, cut once. And the wonderful thing in knitting, that if you do go wrong, you can just unpick it a bit if you need to. Anyway, I hope you found that interesting, and I hope you're all ready to get your yarn and your pattern once I've got it on the page that you can download and get started. Don't hesitate to let me know if you've got any questions. And we'll do another couple of designs next week, which will be part 2 of the sampler Afghan. In the meantime, keep calm, keep knitting, enjoy your knitting, stay home, stay safe, and carry on. Take care, and I'll see you next week. Bye bye for now.